two writers, one just starting out, the other a bestseller. Join James Blatch and Mark Dawson and their amazing guests as they discuss how you can make a living telling stories. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Hello and welcome to the Self-Publishing Formula podcast with Mark Dawson and James Blatch. It is a freaky Friday in fun November. If only November began with an F.
You ran out of alliterative words for November there, didn't you?
I did. What's the alliterative bumper? There must be a word for the alliterative dead end. Sounds like my
I think we're running up against the limit of our lexicographical skills there.
Good for writers, right? Good. So it's been a good week, and we've got a load of students coming on board to the course, and it's always exciting when everyone introduces themselves into Mastery and the tradition we have in Mastery now, which is 2.5 years old. Mastery is the group secret Facebook group you join when you join Ads for Authors, and the tradition is you take a picture of your workstation. We've had some really nice, there's a beautiful shot of somebody near Sydney, I think, who works down by the beach. There was a bit cheating, really. It wasn't actually her workstation, but it was the views she had when she was writing, which is sort of feet up on the table and looking out over the ocean. Quite a lot of interesting looking workstations. I don't know if they're all as good as my up and down desk. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see my microphone going up and down. And but last time we had, it was controversial, but it was fun that this guy posted a picture of him at work, working on the course. He had a laptop open and you could see our icons, and he was at 35,000 feet in the flight deck of an actual commercial airliner, and he then had to come in. Quite a few people were alarmed at the prospect of him doing the course rather than flying the plane full of passengers, but he had to come in and explain that there are long periods where you don't do anything in modern airline flying, and they encourage you to keep your brain occupied, do crosswords, etc., so that you can transition to a quick thought, a curative thought. Is that the right word? I've made that up, probably. A curative.
Yeah,
I've made that up. It's a good word. I'm going to use it from now on. It'll become a word. But we haven't had that, have we? We haven't. Excuse me. We haven't had somebody in their fighter pilot or something doing it yet.
Not yet. We've had someone who's training to fly 747s. So I'm surprised you didn't see that and get excited as you normally do with geeky airplane things like that. But no, we haven't had anything quite like that. But it is lovely to see people all around the world. There's another thread going on at the moment with people telling us where they're from, and Australia, Canada, I was about to say Canada there, Canada, America and the UK, and all places in between, Nova Scotia, Denmark we've had. So it's gone really well. We've had a lot of, I'm not sure how many people, several hundred people have joined since we opened it last Wednesday. And we've had the usual, I should say the usual ups and downs. We're normally fairly smooth, but we had a problem with our course provider, Teachable. Went down on Saturday, so all the videos disappeared, which is absolutely not the experience we want students to have. But thankfully, that was Sunday, wasn't it? And thankfully, you got on the phone to Teachable in New York, and they put the money in the electricity meter, and as if by magic, they came back within about half an hour. But no, it's been great. The people, some lovely testimonials, people commenting and complimenting us on the quality and the presentation and all that kind of stuff that we try hard to make sure is A1. So we're very happy with how that's gone.
Yeah, we do set high standards, and funnily enough, I've just been away for a weekend at a summit in London called the Youpreneur Summit. It's a lot of whooping and high-fiving going on, which is not very me, but a lot of discussion about what's working in the digital world in terms of marketing and funnels and where we should be focusing, etc. And what was interesting about that is talking to people who would volunteer to say to us, your production values are so high, the way we do video, the way we do audio, and so on, and particularly the testimonial videos that we do when we go and interview people who've been on the course. And this course launch has been one where we've struggled a bit up against some gremlins, and we had some, we're always honest about these things. We don't hide behind some kind of pretending nothing ever goes wrong. We had a failure on something that was nothing to do with us in New York, but a couple of things before where the revised course versions weren't appearing in the right place. And so we move quickly because we fret. SPF has has a high standard to keep to. And as someone said to me, that in fact, Joanna Penn was at this event, and she said to me, the trouble is you have to stick to that value now. Everybody expects it from you. But I'm more than happy in this environment of people working online to be the organisation that sets the bar higher than everyone else. More than happy with that, because one of the things that you say to authors all the time is you must look indistinguishable from the multi-billion turnover author houses, publishing houses. And so I think that echoes in the way that we work.
Yeah, and for authors, it's easy and cheap to do that. It's not difficult to hit those standards and keep them. For us, it's a bit more involved and a bit more expensive because there's kit to buy and there's a lot of time invested in making sure that everything looks great. But it is important for us to do that. And it's not a cheap course. It's not like a $49 course that you could do on Udemy. This is an expensive course with a lot of value in it. And one of the things we're very keen on is to make sure that people feel that the experience of learning from us is enjoyable and pleasant, and it looks nice and it sounds great. All of that kind of stuff is really important to us, and that's quality is important, isn't it? It's key. It distinguishes us from some other people, and it's something that we definitely want to make sure we maintain.
Yeah, absolutely. Good values behind the company. Okay, now we have some live webinar training coming up. That's going to be on Tuesday, the 21st of November. So if you're listening to this on launch day, it'll be Friday, I can't do the maths, 18th, something like that, of November. So Tuesday, the 21st. Is going to be a live webinar training, and we are going to learn from Mark Dawson, the guru, the 5 things that are working right now. Have I got that right?
Yes, the 5 things that are working in book marketing right now, and the 2 things that you need to know before you start implementing the 5 things. So a little spoiler, the 2 things are a little bit of maths. So we're going to look at things like return on investment, how to calculate that, and read through, which is very important. Look at that too. And then we'll take that and take both of those things and go into the 5 things that are working now with some numbers for me in terms of how much I'm spending and stuff like that, and the return, and also some kind of tips that I'm using to make my Amazon ads more effective, my Facebook ads more effective. We'll look at messenger bots, do some cool stuff like that. So it should be fun. You can hang out with us for an hour or an hour and a half on Tuesday, 10 p.m. UK time. Sign up at I think the link is selfpublishingformula.com/5 things. Is that right, James?
That is correct. So the digit 5 followed by things, 5 digit THINGS, 5 things. Selfpublishingformula.com/5 things.
And if you can't show up live, we will record it and send it out to people who register. So it's worth getting on that list. I think there's 1,000 that we can accommodate on GoToWebinar. So get involved, get over there as fast as you can, get your name down, and we will. I'll bring you as much interesting information as I can on the Tuesday.
Yep, so that's Tuesday the 21st. Again, that URL, selfpublishingformula.com/5 things. 5 is a digit. One more thing to mention before our interview today, the second of our 2 author interviews in a row. And that is to mention our exciting new project, Book Lab, which we discussed in our Monday morning meeting this morning. And that's a step closer. So we're now very close to identifying the person who's going to be the recipient of the Book Lab process. Now, what happens with Book Lab? It's a bit like taking your car, which is currently running in the road, into the workshop, not because it's broken, but to have it tuned up so that the mechanic can look at it, get under the hood, find out what's working, what could work a little bit better, whether you need different oil. I can't go any further with this metaphor, but basically it's a good tune-up from a set of professionals. So who have we got lined up, Mark, to actually do the analysis here?
So what we'll do is we'll get people to send us their Amazon product page for a book, and we will look at the cover. So that will be handled by Stuart Bache, who does my covers and is actually doing covers for Stephen King at the moment, John le Carré, people like that. So what Stu doesn't know about book covers isn't really worth knowing, to be honest. We'll look at the blurb with Brian Cohen, who has written hundreds of blurbs, including quite a few for me. And Brian will make some suggested changes to tighten blurbs up. We are hoping to get Jenny Parrott, who is my developmental editor, also has done some work with you, James. She's going to look, hopefully, at the look inside sample. So what we can look at the first few pages of the book and make some suggestions on how that could be tightened up, made more attractive. And then I'll kind of weigh in with anything that may have been missed, or some observations that I have with regards to all of those things and how the actual product page looks, and ways that we can make it convert a little bit better. So we're really looking forward to this. I think it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to getting the first one and then starting to break it down in an MC Hammer kind of fashion.
Exactly. So what we're probably going to be looking at is that I will get on the blower in terms of it's an old-fashioned English expression for a telephone, but on this sort of setup with each one of those, and they'll get probably, I would say, 10 minutes probably to go through their observations of what's working, what's good about it, and what could change. And at the end of that, what you've got probably, I'm going to put this out there, is a couple of $1,000 worth of consultancy.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I don't know. It would be in that kind of, maybe that's a bit on the high side, but it would be something very, very valuable and worth having. I would have been very keen to get this kind of advice when I put my first book out there, however many years it was now. So just to get an hour, get Stuart's time and Brian's time and my time too, plus Jenny. That is a valuable package, and we think it will be fun. So we'll be drawing those. We'll be looking to get applications from the Patreon group, so the people who support us on Patreon. And if you want to do that and support us, it is tell me, James, I forget as always, selfpublishingforum.com /
SPF podcast.
There you go. Yeah, so we'll if you want to be considered, put your support us on Patreon, and we will then email out, and probably every month, we think we're going to do at the moment, we'll take one writer and we'll tear their page to bits and then put it back together again, and hopefully make some improvements in the process. So yeah, we're looking forward to getting that started.
We are, of course. The point is that we take one person, they get this individual bespoke feedback, but the rest of us all listen, and we can follow along by looking at their Amazon page and the look inside, and then we can take on board the points that are being made. So
no, it's great for everyone. I mean, the writer who selected every month is going to get a lot of valuable advice. But then all of us can, and I include me in that, all of us can learn from the actual advice that's given every month, and we'll be putting that out. We think it will be a kind of a bonus podcast, maybe like the income reports I did in the run up to this launch. Put it out on a Thursday, perhaps, maybe another half hour of content. But I think that could be really valuable for the community for us to be doing that.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to go into our interview in just a moment. One final thing I wanted to say, just from this weekend, I caught up with a few old friends of the podcast who are from the community, the digital online entrepreneurial community, I suppose you could say. And that included Pat Flynn. And Pat made a really good point to us, which is, sort of geeing us up along the way, because we've been doing this for 2.5 years now. And some of the stuff that we do feels a bit routine, and some of the stuff feels exciting. And he said, never forget the individuals whose lives have changed because they listen to you every week, or they've picked things up, and that you've become their friends and a part of their lives. And he gave some examples of people who had just sent him a photograph of moments in their life where they thanked him, and he'd never heard of them, but he saw his name on a banner at a marathon, and there was somebody who came on stage for that, and other examples. And as he was saying that, I sort of checked my emails, and we had a couple of emails from people who responded to your early emails, Mark, to asking people how they're getting on in their careers, saying, I'm so pleased you've asked me, because I don't talk to anybody about this, and I found somebody. And it just, it's, I don't know how often we say this, not enough, but it's a fantastic community that we feel are very honoured to be a part of, and we don't take anyone for granted in this. We're so excited that you listen to the podcast and that you take part in the SPF community.
Absolutely. And I had a couple of emails yesterday from people who just taken the course, and others who just someone heard me speak at the Salisbury Literary Festival a couple of weeks ago, and he said he would kind of almost given up on writing, but he is now completely, he can see the point of the indie revolution. So it's always lovely to see an impact on people's lives like that. It's one of the real benefits of being able to do this.
Now, that does dovetail nicely into our interview, because this is somebody who we did have an impact on, somebody who has gone from being a full-time teacher to a full-time writer in a short period of time. Now, she attributes a lot of this to SPF, which is great, and you're going to hear that. Of course, she is an amazingly talented writer. She must be underneath that, because people are loving her books. And she's writing in a tough genre, which is, I think, in itself quite an inspiring thing for lots of people. This is not a genre that you would expect the books to fly off the shelf very easily, where you'd expect to have to work quite hard, but she has made this work, and we could not be happier. So her name is Cecelia Mecca. She's popped up a few times in our testimonial interviews, and I knew when we first contacted Cecelia that she was going to be one to watch, and it has proved. So if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see us sitting in a rather nice environment in Moscow, Pennsylvania, I should say. Beautiful part of the world, a couple of hours, I suppose, drive west of New York, and we sat and spoke to Cecelia next to her swimming pool, and she is an absorbing and compelling person to listen to. So let's hear from Cecelia. You live here in Pennsylvania. We're sitting in your backyard, as I believe the Americans call their gardens.
Yes.
It's quite a yard, actually, with a nice pool.
Thank you.
And this is now, ta-da, your workplace.
It is. This is my office. Welcome to my office, which is, as I said, it's a dream come true. I mean, this is unbelievable to me. So yeah, it's quite an office. It's very different from a classroom of 30, 13-year-olds.
So you were teaching?
I did teach. I was an English teacher for 15 years. And then I was a curriculum consultant for 5 years, and I taught teachers.
Okay, so that's what we want to talk to you about.
Yes.
We want to talk to you about this transition, and one of the reasons we want to talk to you about it is because it's the dream of a lot of people listening to this podcast, and they're working towards it. So let's try and find out how you did it, and see if other people can copy it. So first of all, when did you start writing?
I started writing seriously in 2015. I mean, I actually started that manuscript in college. I guess when I was supposed to be studying to be an English teacher.
Well,
and,
it's English, you're
you know,
writing.
it's English. Yeah. And I was researching. I took a medieval studies class, and I've always kind of loved everything medieval England. And that particular class really kind of hit home for me. That being a romance reader as well, those two things started to kind of mesh together. So back then, that was 20 plus years ago, 20-ish, we'll say 20, is when I started to really kind of fall in love with medieval romance and historical romance. And I hadn't read more than a few of them before I thought, wow, this would be really cool to do. And so I started doing some research, and I think I wrote a chapter or two, and that was about 20 years ago. So fast forward to 2015, that's when I picked that manuscript back up and said, okay, this is time to do it.
Oh, really? So it sat in the drawer
for 20 years,
gathering dust for quite a long time. Okay.
Well, I have it in the house. It's actually fun to look at here and there, because that's when, you know, there wasn't an internet, so I had to physically do research in the library, and an
actual paper manuscript. Well, that makes me feel better as well, because that makes my book relatively on time, because it's still not published, and that's been nearly 10 years. So
it's never too late.
I've got 5 years. It's never too late. Now, I've been working on it. Good. Okay, so the medieval and England, you mentioned medieval England, so that's the kind of context for the novels. And is it when you started writing in 2015, did you develop a series idea or just a single novel at that point?
It was a single novel. At the time, I didn't realize kind of series, especially in romance, is where it was at. So it was a single novel, and it's just something I'd always wanted to do. And my family really prodded me. They said, you know, we're really sick of hearing about this novel. We've been hearing about it for a long time. But at the time, I was teaching full time. I have 2 young children, and I also have a business, a social media marketing business with, we have 4 employees. And so having a small business and working full time, I didn't think that there was time to write. But it turns out I was wrong, right? You can always find time for something you really love. And I did. I found kind of a few minutes here and there and picked that back up. I wrote what I thought was an amazing book. And, you know, it actually wasn't. So, I just found the time, because really everybody around me was prodding me. They said, you know, you have been talking about this for so many years, just do it. So I stayed up a little later, and, you know, I did it, and I thought I was finished. It's actually 2 years, because On September 24th is my birthday. That's in 2 days. So it was a day before that I finished the manuscript. So that was 2015. So yeah, here we are 2 years almost to the day when I wrote the end. And little did I know that was really just the beginning, of course. Yeah.
Of your self-publishing
Yes.
journey. And I guess at that point you probably were thinking you were going to get it published by...
Yes, of course. I thought Avon, who is a traditional publisher, especially of romance, historical romance, I thought, this shouldn't be too bad, right? I'll send it to them. I really, obviously, was quite ignorant about publishing. I'll send it to them, and this is such an amazing, I've read hundreds and hundreds of romances. This is a good one. It didn't work out that way.
No.
It didn't work out that way
You'd
at all.
worked out what you're going to spend your advance on, what cars you were going to get.
Oh, yeah.
and all that,
I mean, honestly, no. I didn't think it would be easy, but I did think that, I didn't know much about indie publishing. I actually knew nothing about indie publishing at the time, so I didn't know there was any other path. So I thought, okay, let's do some research. This path here is what I know now is the traditional one, writing a query letter, finding an agent. I had joined, one of the very first things I did as I was writing is join RWA, which is Romance Writers of America. I went to the conference before I even had my manuscript finished, so that was interesting. There were 3,000 people that I didn't know, and that's a very kind of unusual circumstance for me. I felt it was weird, I didn't know one person, I didn't know anything about this industry, but it was amazing. That's what really showed me there are other people doing this, and that it was possible. So when I finished the manuscript, I thought, okay, I know what to do now. I'm going to look for an agent, find a query, or write a query letter, and go from there, because it's all I knew.
Had self-publishing raised itself at all at that point?
I had seen, obviously, some sessions on self-publishing, but I was, as I said, I was ignorant, and I thought self-publishing was something that you did if you couldn't get traditionally published.
Sure.
I probably thought what some people out there think now, that self-publishing is just that other option, but really it is the option. I just didn't know it at the time.
Which you know now. So you went ahead and you
Yes.
tried to get a literary agent.
Yeah, so I tried to get an agent, I started to query, and that's when I learned that this wasn't the book of the century. There was crickets, and so being an English teacher, I thought, well, I'm sure I can write, but it turns out I really didn't. There was a lot I didn't know about story structure, how to write a novel. Writing is one thing, writing a novel is another. And so as I did more research, I realized, okay, this might need some tweaks. And so I started to read, I started to dig in a little bit more and learn the craft, which is what I would tell anyone to do. Start with the craft, even if you think you know the craft. I thought so too. I said I taught reading and writing to people, but I didn't know how to write a novel. And so once I did that, I revised, and I started to kind of get partial requests and full requests, and so I thought I was on a really good path. And I had actually, right before I went to RWA 2016, I had, I think in 1 week, 4 full manuscript requests, and so that was a good week, and I felt really good. But everything changed at that conference when I met another indie author who writes Scottish historical, so it's in my genre, and we went to dinner one night, and she said, can I ask you why you're on this traditional path, or why you haven't considered indie publishing? I said, well, kind of what I mentioned to you, this is the way it is, right? This is what you do. And she said, well, I'm indie published, and I had seen her books. We met the previous year, and so I didn't realize that she was indie published or self-published. And I said, no, I didn't know that. And she said, well, I am, and this is how much I make, and this is what I do full time. And that was it. That was the conversation that really changed everything. The next day I went to a session that was given by the data guy, and that was when I started to really dig into indie versus traditional, and it's what set me on this path.
Yeah, so eye-opening moment for you.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Very
and then
much.
you say set you on this path.
Yes.
So what were your next steps after that then?
So my next steps were to make sure this was the right decision. So when I came home from that conference, I decided to sign up for another conference closer to my home in Connecticut, because I could get a 15-minute sit-down with an Avon editor. And because that was kind of always the dream, I wanted to make sure this was what I wanted to do. I started researching indie publishing, but I wanted to kind of make sure this was the right decision. So I set that meeting. It was supposed to be, to take a look at the manuscript. And really it was, I had one question: will this ever get picked up? Because I had started to ask questions, the right questions, and realized that while historical romance is still very much alive and well, medieval wasn't. It wasn't on the bookshelves. And that's one of the things this author said to me, is look at the bookshelves and see if the books exactly like you write are there. You'll see Regency, but you won't see medieval. And that's, I started to realize it was more of a niche than I had originally thought. So I did that, and I went to that session, and she's like, okay, this is what I think about your manuscript, but what I really wanted to know is, I have a question for you. If this was the best manuscript you had ever read in your entire life, would you buy it? Would this work out? And she said, do you want me to be honest? And I said, yes, that's why I'm here. And she said, medieval hasn't been popular in 20 years, so probably not. Digitally, maybe. And so that was it. If I was going to publish digitally, certainly was not going to give it up to anybody else.
Yeah, so a combination of those two things.
Yep.
So then you started getting serious.
Then I started to get serious, and I came home that weekend. It was in October of 2016, and said, okay, I've just started to learn about indie publishing, but now it's time to really kind of put this in high gear. I still just had that one manuscript. It was a lot better because it had been revised now probably 15, 20 times. I probably should have given up on it, but I couldn't. It was something I'd started 20 years earlier, but it was a lot better than it was because I had learned the craft by this point. And so I started doing my research, and that's what I did. On the way to work, I'd listen to podcasts. On the way home from work, I'd listen to podcasts. That was my kind of professional development time. And the more I learned, the deeper involved I got. Luckily, I was introduced to Mark Dawson, I think probably in November or December of 2015. And then I obviously took the course or I don't know when he opened it up, but it was probably early 2016.
Yeah, June, I think.
Was it?
Or maybe earlier than that,
So maybe before that, I might have been kind of looking at the videos.
That's the 101 self-publishing course.
The 101 self-publishing, yeah. And that's really what showed me how to publish, because now I knew I wanted to be indie published and that this was actually a viable career, because at this point I was thinking this would just be really fun. I have always wanted to write a romance novel, publish a romance novel. I wasn't thinking career. I was thinking that would be so cool, and just to do something I've always wanted to do. But after I met this other author, and she did this full time in my genre, I thought, wow, can you even imagine this is your life? And so that kind of inkling in the very back of my head, if someone else did it, I know I can do it. And let's see how to make this happen. So,
did you, when you started looking into it, at what point, because I'm acutely aware that for some people who think, oh, self-publishing sounds great, then they start to look into it and become very quickly overwhelmed. Did that happen to you?
Never, no, because so I love being online. I've been online for many years. I had that small business I mentioned. It was kind of an influencer marketing business. And I don't have a background in marketing, but I was a blogger. I started blogging back in 2007, 2008, just as a hobby because I like to write. I like being online. Met another blogger, and we kind of partnered up and ended up working with brands to partner brands and influencers. And this accidental business, we always call it, this, it's been since 2009. And I love starting businesses. I love working with people. I think when you get together with other people, great things can happen. And so, we partnered up. This was just one more thing that I had to learn about. And yes, there are a lot of pieces, and I absolutely think without Mark's course, maybe I would have been overwhelmed. But he put it together. It was very compact and easy to learn. And so, I'm sure there are days that I feel overwhelmed, but no, it was kind of more just, this is the goal and let's get it done.
And then at what point did you start thinking that you might need more than one book?
Yeah, I think it was at some point, January, February, I was starting to read and listen to videos and kind of dig in a little bit deeper and join Facebook groups, which I highly recommend. I'm a part of multiple author Facebook groups. I think it's really helpful to read what other people are doing. Yeah, and I think there was one that they talked about, one book just not being enough to make a career. But I do believe it was Mark's course that gave me the idea to go backwards actually and write a novella. I wrote a prequel novella then so that I could use that as a lead gen. And
to give that away free.
And to give that away free, yeah. And actually the author that I had met, that we had the dinner, she said, if you're working full time, one of the things you might consider, now this is very difficult for someone who's impatient, you might want to consider stockpiling a little bit and maybe have 2 or 3. But I kind of wasn't listening to her because I thought, no, I just really want to publish this one. But then it turns out, her advice, I started to see it other places, is okay, maybe I should put the brakes on it. So that book was ready to be published at the end of 2016, but it didn't actually go out until March of 2017, or no, I'm sorry, April. So I wrote the novella and had that edited, and then I put both out basically within a month apart. And then the third one was already kind of in the works. And so I stockpiled 2, but I had 3, already started. because I realized at that point, like you said, one book isn't a career author going to make. So.
And when you did publish them in mid 2017, you did do it as a free giveaway, building a list, and selling the first full novel.
I did the very, exactly as Mark had laid out. I since have pulled that from free for various reasons, but right now it's for sale on Amazon for 99 cents. But I initially used that prequel for lots of different things. I put it into Insta-Freebie and gave it away free. I did use that to build my newsletter. I had, my mother and my sister and my husband at this point on my newsletter. And so when I realized I needed a newsletter, I kind of went into blogging mode and started to partner with other people, because really it's the power of numbers and just working with others. And so I started networking very early on, and I think that's been huge. Working with others, doing, group giveaways and things like that.
I know people are interested in the details,
Yes,
and the free versus 99 cents, a bit of a debate going on about that, and I've seen some people describe 99 cents as a more effective free and so on, so there's different theories on it. So specifically, you say there were various reasons. Why did you move from free?
So the reason I moved from free is one of the things I noticed with my subscribers is the free, because I segmented the list and I knew where they were coming from. I knew my Insta-Freebie subscribers versus my website versus the back matter at this point. I knew they behaved differently, and I knew they reviewed differently. And I decided at some point to just kind of play the long game, which was to train readers, I guess you can say, to buy full price books. I don't discount the books. I did that first one. Like I said, I kind of took Mark's course and did it, to a T. But since then, I've decided that I want the readers to expect $2.99 for the first 2 weeks, goes up to $3.99 after 2 weeks, and it pretty much stays there. I'm sure I'll do sales at some point in the future. I would love to get a BookBub. If I get a BookBub, I would do a sale. But aside from that, I don't want them to think if I buy it now, in a month it will be for sale. And so I guess that's kind of the same theory with the prequel novella. I just noticed the behaviors were a bit different, and so I guess you could say I personally think that there are different markets. There's the readers that are looking for KU. I am in KU. Readers looking for free, and I don't discount that it would be a strong, powerful lead magnet. But since it's come out, I've developed other options. So extended previews. I do character interviews. I have kind of a whole package put together that has since been able to replace that novella.
So you think your list is better quality when they're paying 99 cents for the book?
I do. I think I'm moving it toward that, right? And there is some debate there too. And sometimes I wonder, should I put it for free and what would that do? And so even I don't know the answers. A lot of times it seems like in indie publishing, the answers are very nebulous and nobody can really touch them. So I think they probably would both work, to be honest with you, in different ways. It's just kind of the path I've chosen for now. I'm kind of in this for the long haul, and I want readers to know that this is a book that it's not going to be on sale for very often, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. And how's it gone? I haven't asked this yet. Have you sold some books?
I have sold some books. So the first two that went out, it was very cool. It was nice to have a few $100s, and wow, it's sold. Then the second book, after I had followed the course and really done it to a T, it really did, I guess, take off. I don't know exactly what that means, but enough that I was able to leave my job. So I guess we did okay.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And what a fantastic achievement. And you've obviously just put your nose down and learnt the stuff and implemented it. And I think that's the right thing. You referenced Mark's course several times. Obviously, that's been your guide. And then you've correctly then moved away where it works for you. And you're probably now a guru in some areas going forward. And I noticed you're very active in the groups as well, which is it's one of the great benefits of the community is to have people like you.
I would say one thing that if I were to give advice, if anybody were to ask it, I'm not sure where they would, because I'm really just starting out. I think it's been 7 months since I published my first book. But if they were to ask, I would say just be involved, even if you're not usually the person who raises your hand all the time. I raise my virtual hand all of the time. I'm not shy in the groups. I'm not shy at a conference to talk to people, because that's how you learn. You learn from other people, get advice and tips from other people. If you have a question that you're sitting on, but you're kind of like, oh, but if no one answers it and that post goes completely unnoticed, so what? It's no big deal, Ask the question, and I did that, and I've always done that. And I would say that those groups have been very helpful. The SPF community groups have been very helpful, because there's there's people out there that have been doing this for a lot longer, and there's something to learn from all of them.
Now, when you did start selling books,
Yeah.
I mean, did you go into this thinking, I want to quit my job and do this full time, or did the money start to make you think,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah, no, I didn't think I could quit. I mean, even though I had met other authors that were doing this full time, I thought this was still kind of a retirement thing for me. So someday, you know, in, I don't know, however many years, 15 years, I'll be able to leave education. And I actually never thought I would quit because there's a pension, to be perfectly honest, in education. So the longer I'm in it, you know, I get paid when I'm retired. I can't give that up. So no, I actually never really imagined that until the second book came out and the money started to come, and I thought, wow, I just made this month more than I have, you know, with all of my degrees in education that are now sitting in my basement. This is kind of cool. And then I'd say just this summer that idea took hold, and then it was hard to get rid of. You know, imagining this being my office, it was hard to you know, just think about putting my heels back on and going into the classroom or going into education. And so yeah, it was exciting, and it is exciting. So.
And here you are sitting by your pool with a Mark Dawson mug, I should say, and if you're watching on YouTube, and on a beautiful autumnal day here in Pennsylvania, and well, again, congratulations on that. And what I love about this also is you're not writing, you know, very mainstream romance, and people often say, "Oh, my book's far too niche to be successful," and here is the proof that niche and that the digital world is really set up for that much more than that's why the traditional publishing world don't do it. They can't find the audience using the techniques that you use now.
Yeah, when she said medieval was dead, I thought that's not possible, because I buy medieval romances, I buy different ones all of the time, so I knew that it was there. I do think I'm lucky in a way, though, because my genre does lend itself. It's big enough that I can make this a career. But it's small enough. If I were in contemporary romance, I think I really would have had a harder time kind of clawing my way to the top, getting a bestseller tag on a book. Not that that's easy to do necessarily, but there's certainly less readers in Scottish romance or medieval romance than there are just in historical or even Regency, which is a little bit bigger. So I did find a sweet spot, and I'm happy to have done it. And I feel lucky because what I love, you know, some people have to decide. You know, I've heard this debate for love or money. For me, it just kind of worked out that those two things kind of cross paths.
Yeah, with a little bit of adaptation with the series and the novella and so on. So, yeah, and you're driving sales now how? I mean, you've Facebook ads, I'm guessing?
I'm using some Facebook ads, but more for lead gen, to be honest with you. I'm driving sales by putting the best possible book out there. I mean, I haven't done any promo on the last two books. I just launched a book last week. I haven't paid for any promotions. In the past I have, and I've tracked all of those promotions. There's various services. I've tried most of them at this point. But what I found is that I can sell the books on their own merit almost just as well as with the promotions. So I really think it does go back to that book. And I know this sounds very trite, but those kind of three pillars, you know, the book, the cover, the blurb, having those things in place. But having a great editor, I mean, that I can't discount the fact that my editor is amazing. And I think she's part of the success of the books.
Where did you get your editor from?
Going back to networking from another author, from another romance author, I was telling her, I actually hired an editor, spent I think $400 or $500, and I said, you know, I think I feel good about her. She said, well, if you're hesitating, that's a problem. And I said, well, I don't know. I've never had a professional editor edit my book. I mean, she did some sample edits. She said, did you talk to other people? I said, well, no, but there were testimonials on her site, and, you know, I did a sample edit. And she said, well, you know, why don't you take a look at mine? I'll ask her if she has any space. She was a Big 5 editor, and, you know, compare the edits. So I had to pay for that. I thought, well, I already paid for an editor. I don't know if I want to pay for another one, but there was that kind of, that feeling of, oh, I don't know, I don't feel great about this. I'm just going to go ahead and bite the bullet. Then when, you know, I hired her for that first, actually I think she did the novella first, and that was kind of a way to test it out. There was no comparison, you know, so you get what you pay for.
Yeah, yeah.
And I thought I had done my research, but really talking to other authors, there's no other comparison. So it goes back to that networking for me, almost always.
So, the future for you, you've quit your job. How was your husband about this, by the way? You should say you're married with children. And
Yes, he is amazing. He has never read my books, to be honest with you. He knows all about them. We plot them and things like that. He helps me, but he's not a reader, and so this is a whole new world for him. But to his credit, when I came back at that first conference, I said, I think this is what I'm going to do, and this whole indie publishing thing, he said, okay, let's do it. And he learned about ads. He runs all of my AMS, and neither of us knew what AMS meant or stand for, but he runs all of those ads now, and he comes home every day. He tells me about my sales. It's actually really cool. We've kind of forged a new area in our life that is around the book sales, and it's in the books, and it's exciting, and it's a lot of fun. So he loves it, and he's very involved, and I think that's great too. It's fun.
Good, yeah. So the future. So you've got a supportive husband, always useful, and it's working out for you so far. I mean, the sales have stayed.
So I launched a book last week. It's doing exactly what the last book did. So I think right now it's a matter of building a backlist and the future. So less than a year ago, I wasn't even imagining making money off of books. So it's hard to imagine what will happen. But yes, that goal definitely, that bar just keeps kind of moving up, because now, first it was a few sales would be great, and then it was quitting my job would be great, and now, of course, it's hitting a bestseller list or taking it to that next level would be great. But I do have a background in, I spent a few years as a consultant, and so I definitely see myself moving into, at some point, the nonfiction. I love to speak to groups. I love to design workshops and things like that. I've done it for years with teachers, so I could see kind of moving into that part of the book publishing and marketing area as well. So I have some ideas, but I need to make sure that I have my solid foundation first. So.
Yeah, well, you certainly have built a solid foundation. It's a brilliant story, Cecilia. Thank you for coming onto the podcast and sharing it with us. And thank you for hosting us in this lovely, beautiful, wooded area of Pennsylvania. We should say, if you're just listening on audio, you can hear the trees rustling and occasionally John Dyer stamping on leaves. There you go, as he moves around. Can you clear some leaves up while you'll make yourself useful? Go and do the pool. He could be the pool boy, couldn't he?
Let's not go there. I've seen that film.
Yeah. So we're going to keep in touch with you, Cecilia. We're going to follow your progress in the groups, and I know that everyone wishes you success. It's a happy story for self-publishing, and hopefully inspirational for people like me and others who are just starting out on that journey.
Well, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. And if anyone ever has any questions, I love to teach, and so once I know something, I'm happy to pass it along. So thank you.
I actually sat next to quite a few swimming pools on that trip. And at one point, Mr. Dawson emailed me and said, perhaps don't sit next to a swimming pool in the next interview. But
it started to look a bit samey. All these swimming pools, I started to get quite swimming pool envy.
One of them we haven't actually released yet, because it was an interview really about the 101 course, so we'll save that one for next year. That was David in LA, and he had the nicest swimming pool, but then he lived in one of those, drop my pen. He lived in one of those lovely apartment blocks where they have this shared pool facility, so it wasn't all his pool. It was nice though. Let's talk about Cecilia, who is not. I love Cecilia for many reasons. She's an Anglophile for a start, so she loves everything about the UK, and you can tell that from her books, obviously. She prepared a basket for John and I at the beginning of a long journey through the States, and this basket was full of Pennsylvania goodies. So Hershey, I didn't realise Hershey comes from Pennsylvania, and there were so many other things: peanut butter, little peanut butter bites, and beer.
Where's
Pennsylvania
mine?
Beer. Well, see, that's the thing, Mark. Our luggage was pretty full, and we were quite hungry. And once you've combined those two facts, you didn't get anything back. But we did get signed books, so that was absolutely lovely of Cecilia. And
yes.
But also, just to hear somebody who is organised and listens to it and understands how to apply it and applies herself and then has success, that in itself is just a great thing to hear.
Exactly. No, I met Cecilia at RWA in Florida before you met her, and she'd only just, I think she was just thinking about leaving her job. And then in the interim between me meeting her and you meeting her, she did leave her job. And I know what that feels like. It's 3 years since I did that. And it's a wonderful thing to be able to do, to support yourself and your family with your writing. And she is a smart cookie. I immediately knew that when I saw some stuff that she'd put together and shared with the community, very high quality, which is always a good indication that someone is taking this seriously. So I'm not at all surprised that she's doing so well.
Yeah, we have an amazingly talented family growing in SPF, and we couldn't be happier about that. Great. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you on this Friday. Don't forget the live webinar training is on Tuesday night. We didn't give the time out. We're always a bit wary of giving a time out. So when we say Tuesday night, what we mean is Tuesday night in the UK. It's probably going to be something like 4 p.m. in the afternoon, New York, and then a bit earlier in the afternoon, depending on how far west you're going to go. And if you're in Australia, who knows? I mean, probably breakfast time.
Knows?
I'm thinking something like that. It's always a bit unfair, isn't it, for the Australians? But
I
breakfast
feel very bad for the Australians.
Well, they get all that beautiful sunshine and sea and coast
That's true.
in Sydney, so I don't feel too sorry.
And they'll probably beat us at cricket this year as well, so there you go.
Well, yeah, the Ashes is about to start, which Americans are wondering what on earth we're talking about now, but that's a big thing, so we're all looking forward to that. Yeah, proper baseball. Yeah, so where was I? What was I saying?
Webinar. Australia. Times.
Webinar. That's what I'm saying. Webinar.
10 p.m. UK.
Whenever we talk about times, everything goes to haywire. So it's going to be on Tuesday evening UK time, a little bit early in the afternoon if you're further west in the States. And to sign up for the webinar, as Mark says, even if you're not sure you can actually make it on Tuesday night, the only way you can get a replay is if you've registered in the first place. And the replay will be sent to you automatically the next day. So you need to go to selfpublishingformula.com/5 things. 5 is a digit, things is a word, and you will be on the list. And we look forward to talking to you then. And if you can't join us on Tuesday, we'll see you next Friday. In the meantime, have a great week writing and a great week selling. Goodbye.
You've been listening to the Self-Publishing Formula podcast. Visit us at selfpublishingformula.com for more information, show notes, and links on today's topics. You can also sign up for our free video series on using Facebook ads to grow your mailing list. If you've enjoyed the show, please consider leaving us a review on iTunes. We'll see you next time.